It's those deepest days that you really need to listen to because that's the denominator that determines how much stress you have. Yes, you are a caregiver and your heart is going to be full of compassion to keep going. You're on this roller coaster and your body is spitting out adrenaline and cortisol with that roller coaster. And the faster that wave gets of the roller coaster, the more stress you're going to have. We got to give ourselves a break.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
have to do it.
Yes, yes. Don't give up your life.
Welcome to the Answers for Elders radio show.
And welcome everyone to Answers for Elders Radio Network, heard across the USA on your favorite podcast channel. And make sure you check us out on YouTube. Did you realize today in the United States of America, 53 million Americans are family caregivers providing unpaid assistance to their loved ones with either health conditions, disabilities, or aging issues. And by the year 2030, this is powerful. There will be over 70 million. This past week, we have seen the aftermath of Gene Hackman's death and his wife, Betsy. And I really wanted to talk a little bit about today of how in the world do things like this happen? And so I personally asked our wonderful Daphne Davis, who deals with family caregivers every single day, the CEO and founder of Pinnacle Senior Placements. Daphne, welcome to the show. And I'm so glad you're here because this is such an important issue.
Well, I'm really glad that we're talking about this. This is something that's front and center daily for me as I help people find long-term care and housing. It is epidemic proportions of
Hmm.
what caregiver burnout looks like. And
Hmm.
then also when not having enough care, what that means to the family as a whole,
Right.
and particularly in my world to the senior that's needing care.
Yeah. And, I always say, who will care for the caregiver? Because so many caregivers do not take care of themselves. And this is a perfect example of Betsy, who had, I believe it's called hantavirus. It's a rare disease, but here's the thing that's so overwhelming is, she didn't take care of herself. She didn't, and she let her disease progress to the point where she passed away. And she was on the phone with her doctor, but it was probably she didn't follow through on the direction. Of course, we will never know exactly the facts of that phone call. But the whole point is it's overwhelming. They tend to ignore their own health, their own symptoms, their own lives. They let themselves go down the rabbit hole and they and just all in the sacrifice of caring for someone else. And this is a classic scenario.
It is, but it also isn't necessarily something that just sneaks up or is, front and center. It sneaks up
Mhm.
on them.
Yeah.
Um, the power of stress on our bodies is not always able to be seen when
Right.
you're in it. And sometimes even from your family. If you've got daily routine with your family, they may not see the effects of your added responsibilities and being a caregiver. But internally, your body is fighting to hang on. And that changes from decade to decade. The more birthdays you have, the
Mm-hmm.
more profound stress can be on your body
True.
functions.
True.
And so when you have a doctor or a friend or someone who's visiting you after seeing you, maybe a few months ago, really, really listen to what they're saying. Please don't
Hmm.
dismiss it. It is
Yes.
very important because you are in the thick of things. If you're the caregiver, you are in the thick of it and you are in the routine of doing what you do on a daily basis. As someone as a daughter, I'll speak as a daughter. I remember when my mom would say, Daphne, today wasn't that bad. Or when she had a really bad day, she'd say, tomorrow will be better. Or when it was really stressful and she was caring for my dad who had Lewy body's dementia and Parkinson's, when it was a very stressful day and
Hmm.
things really were falling apart, that's when she was most often ready to get some additional care. And
Right.
then the sun comes up the next day and she says, no, Daphne, I can go another day.
Yeah.
But it's those deepest days that you really need to listen to because that's the denominator that determines how much stress you have. Yes, you are a caregiver and your heart is going to be full of compassion to keep going. And then, your person that you're caring for, they'll say something very loving, or you'll have a very clear moment, or someone's legs are working really hard and, they're strong, or you'll have a clear day that you get to go outside and sit in the sunshine together and watch the birds, or, someone's watching you pick the tomatoes off of out in the garden, and you have joy again,
Hmm.
and then it dips again. And so you're on this roller coaster, and your body is spitting out adrenaline and cortisol with that roller coaster. And the faster that wave gets of the roller coaster, the more stress you're going to have. In the beginning of a journey, the wave is a little bit slower. It's a little longer.
Right.
And that
Well,
that's a
I think,
different time then.
yeah, and it's interesting because 65% of family caregivers are either caring for a spouse, parent, or grandparent, and they're over the age of 50. And when you look at 65% over the age of 50, we're already at that point where, your body is starting to age more rapidly when you get over 50. And yet, 70% of family caregivers in the USA are holding down a job on top of it. So they have the stress of their own family in many cases. They have a stress of employment and their employer. And they also have the stress of the expectations of a family member of caring for them. And, when I think we all look at our own past experiences of caring, just like what I did for my mom. I remember standing in the kitchen one day feeling like everything is on my shoulders. And I just felt this heavy weight, like all of a sudden it hit me. And I remember that moment just absolutely vividly of what it felt like, Daphne. And, I know, it goes on all the time like that.
It does. You add, living in 2025, and, believe me, I do not want to get political, but we have lots of stresses on our lives right
Hmm, we
now.
do.
I believe more so than ever. I'm only 61 years old, but I've lived long enough to see trends,
Hmm.
and add all of our cultural things going on, our economic things, world issues, and then add just the daily routine of some days being survival mode. We got to give ourselves a break.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
have to do it.
Yes, yes. Don't give up your life. I have said that so many times to people, and yet, oh, I know. And then it just goes out of their head. They don't understand the importance of absolutely setting healthy boundaries, and don't, find resources that can fill in for you in that caregiving mode. There's no heroics in you sacrificing yourself to be there for a loved one when your own life goes down the rabbit hole.
That's exactly right. And that's where adult children come in, to being able to advocate for, and I'm going to use the word to,
Hmm.
their parents as adult
Hmm.
children. It is a responsibility. And each family's dynamics are different and how you're all set up, but there is a place for adult children to be bold, to be gently bold and say to mom or dad, I don't see how you can continue this any
Hmm.
longer, because a natural caregiver is going to shoulder up. They do not have the ability to see themselves in the equation. That's a
They're the
natural
unsung hero
wiring.
in many cases. They won't speak up for themselves, and they feel this enormous responsibility. And so what happens is, and they're always usually the one in the family that always has the happy face, even though, turmoil is going beneath the surface. They still put that smile on every day. And so the family oftentimes doesn't even realize the stress that they're under.
That can happen. It certainly can, because the caregiver will say, things are doing great. Your dad
Hmm.
and I are doing fine. We just went and walked to the mailbox yesterday, or,
Hmm.
so and so is coming over, and yeah, we're eating, and, but they don't communicate the stress of making a meal, or they
Right,
don't communicate what it means to walk down a few steps to get to the
right.
sidewalk.
So we're going to be talking about this Very important issue. And in the meantime, for those of you that are interested in learning more, Daphne is an amazing information post, and she is going to be back with me in our next segment right after this. Did you know that you can discover hundreds of podcasts in our library on senior care? So visit our website and discover our decision guides that will help you also navigate decision making. Find us at answersforelders.com.